So both Terry and Jeremy have spoken about shifting environmental baselines, and this is a concept at the heart of my research. We know that with increasing pressure comes decreasing resources, but we don't often know the true magnitude of change, and this creates problems when we're setting conservation or recovery goals. And in many cases, insights from the past can help us to better understand the extent of changes that have occurred. So today I'm going to present you with a case study from the subtropics. Pink snapper is found in rocky reef environments in South Queensland. It's an iconic recreational fish species, and it has a long history of fishing, and recent stock assessments have raised concerns about it. However, there's limited long-term data on snapper. Other than some incomplete landings data, we don't have much information prior to the 1990s, so we don't know the extent of change that has occurred during the intensification of fishing in Queensland. So I decided to delve into the archival records. In this case, newspapers, forgotten government reports, old books, and in doing so, I was able to recreate catch rates from the earliest days of the offshore fishery. So this is one of the earliest examples I could find from 1871. So you can see that there's 27 fishermen. They're fishing for 2.5 hours, and they catch 513 snapper. And this is a catch rate of roughly about 7.5 snapper per fisherman per hour. So of course, when I found this record, I was pretty excited. And I started to dig deeper, and I discovered that this wasn't a one-off. In fact, there were many examples of early snapper catches, and they were often pretty impressive for a few hours' work. See here, 711 snapper in 3 hours, over 1,000 fish, mostly snapper, 400 fish, and that's with 12 improvised fishing lines. They didn't know they were going to go fishing that day. 756 snapper. And the interesting thing about this is these weren't regular fishermen. These were people who might go out once a year, maybe a few times a year, but they got these astounding catches. So I did a pretty thorough search of the newspaper articles, but also fisheries reports, a few dusty old books. There was a government survey as well. And it took some time, but eventually I ended up with this graph, which is great. It gives us 70 years of catch rates from 300 individual trips, starting from the very beginning of this fishery. And this is when steam power first arrived and people were first able to go outside of those bays and estuaries into the open ocean at regular intervals. You can see that a variety of catch rates recorded, from the quite normal to the frankly amazing. But what do these catch rates actually mean? We need to put them into the context of what is happening today. Well, to my horror, modern-day data sources were not quite so easy to come by to look at this catch rate per hour. So we escaped from the library, and we decided to think a bit differently about this and try to find some modern data sources that we could use. So the first one was a guy who had decided to start collecting charter data on a daily basis. And he did this for a period of 20 years, and he was kind enough to let me access his data. We also pestered over 100 fishermen at length about their memories of contemporary and past catch. So I'm just going to show you a snippet of the results. These are catch rates from the first 3 decades of that fishery. So the average catch rate was around 6 snapper per fisher per hour. Now let's have a look at the charter fishery from the last 2 decades. Now you can see there's been a big decline. In fact, there's been a 92% decline in catch rates. But it's always good to look at more than one data source. So this shows you the memories of these contemporary recreational and charter fishermen, and this is their typical catch. This is what they would get typically in terms of the number of snapper per fisher per hour. And this is for the last 2 decades, and you can see there's been a 77% decline. So it's still a big decline. It doesn't look as bad as the charter data. However, we know from other research that we've conducted that fishermen do exaggerate. I know this is a generally held perception anyway. But actually, we measured it, and so we can quantify how much they exaggerate by. Also, this isn't a random sampling. This is snowball sampling, so these are some of the best fishermen that we could find, and they have a suite of modern data at their, modern technology at their disposal. So these changes in catch rate show that big declines have occurred in the fishery, and the magnitude of change that we're seeing is in line with historical studies from around the world that look at other heavily exploited fisheries. So where do we go from here? Well, it's certainly not good news for snapper populations, but by providing this benchmark, we are providing managers with information that they require in order to set more appropriate recovery or conservation goals. Snapper are certainly reduced, but there's no reason that they couldn't improve if the social will was there. So we feel that the best thing that we can do is to really communicate this information. So we've been communicating with Fisheries Queensland throughout this, and they are going to try and find ways that they can incorporate this information into their stock assessments, if that's possible. But we don't just want to talk to the managers, we also want to talk to the fishing community. So we're going to be feeding this information back to those communities, and hopefully by communicating with these different groups of people, we can start to reset these shifted environmental baselines to the benefit of snapper populations. So I'd like to acknowledge my supervisor, John Pandolfi, and also my collaborators, Alex, Sarah and Juan. Thank you.